Hi guys, welcome back to Creative Tab. I hope you guys are doing well. We are starting a new series today called VFX Talk, and we're starting off talking to Connor Tong, who is an ex-student of mine, now working as a roto and prep lead up at Union VFX. So, without any further ado, let's dive straight on into the interview. Welcome, Connor. So, obviously, Connor is an ex-student of mine. We're going to be doing a bit of an interview today, asking you some questions for some of my students, asking you your experience in industry and stuff like that. So, do you want to just start off by introducing yourself, telling us who you are, where you've come from, what you do, where you work?
Yeah, so my name's Connor Tong. I was a student at Nescott College doing Next Gen Skills Academy, starting with the level 2 course, then progressing to the level 3 course. So I did that for about 3 years. And then after that, I applied to the level 4 Next Gen apprenticeship, where I had a placement at DNEG Visual Effects, where I started from the very bottom of the 2D pipeline, and then I rose to become a senior artist within those 2 years, because it was very aggressive. And so all in all, PARS Next Gen Skills Academy, I was there for about 5 years, and now I'm at Union Visual Effects as a roto lead.
Nice, awesome. So that's great. Yeah, you see, you've definitely worked your way up, and that's really good. 3 years in, yeah, roto lead at Union VFX. That's awesome. So when you were applying for that apprenticeship with Next Gen, that level 4 apprenticeship, I'm assuming you had some sort of showreel, yeah?
Yes.
So, for a good question for some of my students, something they kind of want to know is, if you were making a showreel, what pointers would you give them? What advice would you give them when they're making their showreel, really?
It's a bit of a tricky one because it's always personal preference from show reels that I've seen. But from what I've done on my reels personally is don't make it any more than a minute and a half long maximum.
Okay.
Because I'd imagine some employers may tend to get a little bit bored after a minute and a half, I suppose. Try and do the best showcase your best stuff first, because they want to see what you can do from the bat, and then do your like half decent stuff in like the middle section of the showreel, and then do another third of your best stuff at the end.
Okay.
That's the way that I've done my showreels, and it's worked for me. I managed to get into Union with that showreel or type of showreel. The third one's always tricky because the main two are the ones that pretty much cover all the bases.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of tricky to think of a third point.
Would you, when you're doing your showreel, do you do a showreel which literally shows shot after shot, and do you do a separate one which is a breakdown, or do you do it kind of all in one?
I've been told and done to just do it all in one, so just show final comps.
Okay.
Depends on the type of showreel that you're doing. So if you're a 2D artist like me, then you do the final comps if you can get them. If you're a Houdini or 3D artist of any kind, then I believe it's a good idea to show the breakdowns of how you've done like the simulations for build instructions or like fauna, no foliage like growth.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it all depends on the type of role. But from my pathway, I normally don't do breakdowns.
Okay, cool.
But that's not to say that you can't. I suppose that all depends on what you do. So I think roto is a good example. There's no real way to show roto in the final comp. So you can do like a really short breakdown of, if you're able to show what the footage looks like before, then show a single frame of what you have drawn, and then show a single frame of the final comp, and then just continue to show that final comp.
How about if obviously you're, and we'll get onto this question in a sec, you're like sort of roto and prep lead. If you were looking at incoming show reels for roto specifically, do you think it would be advantageous to almost have, maybe play the shot and then also play the shot with the sort of matte, sort of semi-transparent on top, so you can actually see the area that's been rotated, or would you say it's not really particularly needed?
It's that's kind of tricky. I would say it's definitely useful because I can then see exactly, okay, so you haven't just done one frame. I can see that you've done X, Y, Z over a certain amount of frames. So I would say that if that's the way that the student would like to do it, or anyone for that fact would like to do it, then go ahead. I don't see why an employer wouldn't look at that. If it was me personally, I would like to see it because then I can see, okay, so you've matched the edge of the roto spline to this edge, and it's quite consistent across all the way throughout. So then I would say, okay, that's very good to pass on. And if I was quality checking it, then I would say that's approved. So
okay.
Yeah, so to me, I think that is a way if that's down to the preference.
Cool. So you're on about like quality checking then. So could you explain a little bit more of your role as a roto lead, and how does that differ from a roto artist? What's the explain a day in your life and how it's different from a roto artist.
So a normal roto prep artist, from my experience, it's literally just been given a number of shots to do throughout a week, and then I roto on one or do prep on the other, and I do that rinse and repeat throughout the entire week. There's nothing really different about that in terms of it's the same thing every time. You get given a new shot, you have to do it, and you just have to do it over and over again. But depending on the shot, there are different types of techniques you can do. Not so much with roto, because roto, it's practically the same thing. You just draw shapes around people and then you do it frame by frame if you have to, or if you are very good with tracking, then you are able to stabilize it very well and let the tracker do majority of the work for you, and you just roto on that tracker. Whereas with prep, depends on the type of shot you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do a marker removal, you can do still patches, or you can do live patches. That's completely up to the preference of the artist on how they think they can officially get that job done, but it's completely different methods. So in terms of that artist role, that's pretty much what you do. Comparing it to my role at the moment, I'm in charge of maintaining the roto pipeline. And recently I've had to create the pipeline because Union didn't have an efficient one before, so I just helped refine it a little bit more. So I'm just in charge of maintaining that and do the quality checking of all the work that my team does, which tends to be just roto. I don't really QC any prep, and I also just come up with suggestions for production if they need to figure out what exactly we should give to the other artists, and how we're able to distribute everything evenly so we can get the job done within a deadline that we're given.
Wow, so that's it is quite a difference then. It's gone from, I wouldn't say a roto artist is a creative role, really, more technical, but it's you've got even more technical than your kind of previous role then, maintaining that workflow and implementing that. That's good going. Yeah,
it's a lot of hard work. It does pay off though. yeah, it definitely differs between the two.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay, so I got another question from one of my students here, which is going to be quite interesting for a lot of graduates, a lot of students. Can you explain anything about the interview process that you've been through? For example, what obviously it'll change per role, so maybe be interested to hear about the one you had for the apprenticeship first. What kind of questions do you think students need to be ready for, need to kind of think about before going into the interview?
Um, so with my apprenticeship one, definitely research the company,
Okay.
because when I had my assessment day, it was completely different to an ordinary interview. So I had a assessment day where you do like do a team-based activity to demonstrate, okay, you can work with a team, you can do it really well, and you're thinking intuitively to get the job done.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, with the questions, they pretty much asked me for the apprenticeship, what do I know about the interview? Not the interview. What do I know about the company, and how do I think I can best contribute to the ethos
Oh, great.
of the company, and how you're able to do the job that you think you can do, and then they'll just ask a load of technical questions, from my experience anyway, which I couldn't give you because I got asked so many at the time. So there's no way that I can give you an example.
Yeah.
Um, the best one to lead with is, if you do research the company, then you'll feel 10 times more confident because you'll understand exactly how they operate, and then that means you can answer questions, because they will typically, from my experience, they will kind of reflect what they do into the question that they ask.
Okay.
Um, so that's the best way to definitely prepare for it. And then just go through a list of generic uh, interview questions that I suppose you can find online, and just practice those over and over again. Because if you're able to answer them confidently, then they're going to see, okay, it's good material. He or she is good material
Yeah. I
to
guess,
have in a company.
like you said, having not being knowledgeable about the company, obviously that then shows that, against somebody who hasn't shown they're knowledgeable about the company, that's going to make you stand out instantaneously. So yeah, it's a very good point. Excellent. Did your interview for Union VFX, did that differ in any way? Because it was a slightly different role.
Yeah, so with that one, I didn't have to do an assessment of any kind. I just went in for an interview. Um, they asked me, uh, they asked me to go through my showreel, step by step. Asked me, okay, what did you do here? How did you do it? And was there any way that you could potentially do it better, in terms
Okay.
of the methodology that you did around it? Um, that's what they mainly did, and if I recall, then that was basically how my interview was based around. It's just purely around my showreel. Saying that, that is my first proper industry interview, so I don't have that much experience in comparison between the apprenticeship and the actual job interview.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Another question that we've got. What would you? Yeah, that's an interesting one. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
Oh, easy.
It's the IMDb
Having it,
credits, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Oh,
literally having your
it is.
name on a credit. Yeah,
Oh, right, okay. I was saying, I'm thinking, surely it's got to be that, but it is that then, is it?
yeah. So not just having online portfolio for everyone to see what shows you've worked on, but also when you go and see the film in the cinema, for example,
Yeah. Okay.
like I did with Avengers Endgame.
I mean,
See
that's
my
that's
name.
that's that's a hell of a film to have to your name in it. So you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, box office hit. Yeah, it's definitely a great one to have. Yeah, seeing my name in that was the most rewarding thing. So as much as working on the shows is good enough, I can guarantee for any new artist going into a role, they will feel really satisfied with the fact that they've worked on a film and they can see their name in the credit for billions to look at.
Yeah, great. Do you have a favourite kind of project you worked on?
Yes. Funnily enough, Avengers Endgame. Uh,
It's gonna be one of the ones that's got to be up there, really, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a big number, but the reason why that project in particular is because I learned majority of my technical knowledge from that show.
Right. Okay.
Um, all of the prep techniques, because that was the biggest show that I had to learn how to be a prep artist on.
So, are
Um,
you talking like sort of projection, cleanup projection kind of stuff, or?
yeah, so yeah, UV projections, cam
Mm,
projections, any any methods to help clean up, including how to use 3D space in Nuke and to just utilize that to do your
mm,
cleanup. There was a lot of mythology that I did have to learn
mm-hmm.
uh, because of how complex the show is, or the show was, even past tense. So that's by far my favorite project, just because it was so hardworking and it really tested my skills.
That's kind of nice to hear that it's your favorite project rather than just like, I mean, come on, it was Endgame, of course it's going to be my favorite. But hearing that it was your favorite because you learned a lot of new skills as well. That's really quite good to hear, really.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there were other favorite shows, like Bohemian Rhapsody, Venom,
Mm,
which I learned a lot on as well. But the main aspects of my knowledge came from Avengers,
yeah,
hands down.
nice. Okay, so you mentioned about using Nuke and stuff for the cleanup up there. Was Silhouette used much for the roto or?
Um, Not so much for the rotor Egg, because that they had their own in-house software to use,
Hmm.
which is purely for roto. Silhouette was mainly used for paint, which is very handy for um, uh, frame by frame paint jobs. Like here, for example, if you have wire behind a frame, there's
Okay.
not really any practical use of trying to clean up that that wire through patches consisting of a number of frames.
Hmm.
So Silhouette's very good in terms of the user friendliness of all the tools and how the tools are implemented to allow you to clean up that wire behind that piece of hair very, very well. Um, it's amazing for frame by frame jobs. It is good for long patches, but I personally have never needed to use Silhouette for longer patches. For that, I
Okay.
would use Nuke personally. Um, Saying that, at Union we do everything in Nuke,
Right.
so there's literally there's no difference in terms of the mythology that you use.
Hmm.
So it'll either be frame by frame or be still patches.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, there's not really much that I know about for the roto side of that just yet.
Okay. Now, this isn't a question. The next question isn't a question that I had written down. It's just a question from my point of view, and I'd be interested to know your point of view. So, when you're doing these sort of 3D projections, and you've had to do some sort of 3D camera tracking in order to set this up. Do you? I'm really not a fan of Nuke's camera tracker. I know it's a wild one out there, but I'm in love with Synthesize, and I don't know if you've ever probably even used Synthesize, but do you go for the standard Nuke camera tracker? I say standard, I really shouldn't because obviously I don't use it well enough. But do you go for the Nuke camera tracker, or do you use any third party 3D match move software for specifically cleanup?
Um, well, yeah, I personally don't use the camera tracker either, probably for the
Okay.
same reasons you don't.
Yeah.
um, we have dedicated match move artists to
Right. Makes sense. Yeah.
to provide us a camera and geo if we need it. Um, 9 times out of 10, all the shots or most shots will have um, that stuff ready and available for me as the prep artist or for the compo to use.
Mm.
because most of the time it's any type of comp that you do does involve a camera needed of some kind. So I've personally never had to use anything like that, but they do use it quite a bit.
Okay.
And to use the cameras that they give us, it's very efficient in terms of time.
Yeah, I imagine.
And it does to know that it is a very accurate camera means that there shouldn't be any faults in the patch that you're trying to create, because in theory it should just line up perfectly.
Yeah, makes sense. Is there a preferred? Have you obviously you've worked in two places in Soho, but is there a preferred sort of third-party tracking software? Because I've heard that 3D Equalizer is very big up there. What are they? What have they been? The artists that provide you with the cameras, what have they been using?
I can't remember what they use at DNEG, but Union we use 3D Equalizer.
Okay.
I know some use PF Track.
Yeah.
And those are the main two that I've really heard. So I wouldn't know if there's more out there that can be used. I know that Autodesk does have its own 3D equalizer type software. I've never really used it.
I've never used it. Like when I was doing match moving 2 or 3 years ago, I was kind of looking into all the different softwares. I was told in the studio to use Synthize, and so I learned that. But I was looking, and they had like Autodesk Match Mover or something, and I was like, I've barely ever heard of it kind of being used. Maybe I could be completely wrong. Maybe it is widely used, but I've never really heard of it being used. It's normally Equalizer, PF Track. I think I haven't heard of Boujou being used for a long time. So yeah, it's normally those two that I hear of.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I used it once, the Autodesk 3D Tracker.
Okay.
Match Mover. I used it once. I didn't particularly like it. I never used it again.
Yeah.
But I think that's just my preference. Compared to when I did try PF Track once, then I could see that was 10 times better.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's nodal based as well, which I like. So we've talked about obviously some of your like most rewarding parts, like the Avengers Endgame, got to be up there. We're gonna flip it on the coin now. What is the what challenges have you faced throughout your career? So these could be like a specific challenging shot, or it can be a project, or it can be anything really. What would you say the biggest challenges you faced?
So I don't know. It's tricky. I've never really had a proper challenge to an extent. So I'd imagine deadlines are one thing, because on most shows that I've been on, deadlines tend to go over, not just due to the nature of shows. There's always going to be a last minute thing. So it's the challenge of trying to make sure that I'm able to get everything that I need to get out for that particular shot, for that particular show, done for the deadline as quick as possible. From shot perspective, shots with loads of parallax is definitely my personally from a creative thinking point of view, with lots of parallax, because there are so many different things I have to try and consider when you've got like two buildings intersecting with each other. It's kind of a tricky one, because you really do have to think deep about how you're going to figure out whether you're going to just do one massive patch, for example, or if you're going to do loads of tiny patches to try and meet that same parallax with whatever you're trying to remove.
Yeah, okay.
But other than that, I haven't really faced any big challenges yet. So
I would have thought
I couldn't answer that.
I would have thought the commute would be one. Or are you living in London now?
Yeah. Well, I live in South London.
Okay.
But my route is very it's a very quick one. It's a very direct route. So
Oh,
even the
lucky
commute.
then.
But saying that, if you don't live in the type of area that I live in, then yeah, commute's going to be one thing because the tube is always a nightmare.
Yeah,
Nobody likes going on the tube.
yeah.
So yeah, so if you're talking about like everyday route sort of things, then commute's definitely going to be a big challenge. But now with unfortunately because of COVID,
Mm.
we're now able to do remote working as well.
Oh, that's handy. That's
So
really good.
yeah, so I've been working from home since March,
Have you
whenever we
really?
started going. Yeah, since we've been in lockdown.
Wow.
So if commute is an issue, I'd imagine afterwards, I could be completely wrong. But I'd imagine it's now more of an avenue to work from home,
Mm.
given that we've all been forced to do it now.
Oh yeah, that sounds like I've heard of artists working from home and having been out of the industry for a few years now. It's kind of like you know, you're not even allowed to take memory sticks into some studios. It's the security's so tight. Being able to work from home is like that's a huge step in. It's just meant I
Yeah,
just find that
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. No, it is. I've always wondered how the security side of things is going to work.
Mm.
Um, I think that's purely down to the trust that your employer like bestows on you
Mm.
to make sure that you're completely protected, like your PC. So, like having antivirus, for example, having the antivirus completely up to date,
Mm.
and stuff like that. And they will give you a login to access their secure network
Yeah. Okay.
uh, through like a two-step authentication type of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, so it's a big step for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, it really is. Back to those student questions again. Um, what are the... Yeah, this is a good one. What would you say, having gone through the whole process, are the most important skills for someone wanting to pursue a career in VFX? So this could be software skills, but it could also be like interpersonal skills like teamwork. What do you think are the most important skills to have?
Um, definitely, and I know this might sound a little bit cliche, but definitely communication.
Hmm?
Um, because the entire basis of the job is that you need to communicate with production or with a lead artist to understand what they need. So from a roto prep perspective, you need to be able to ask the lead what exactly they need rotoed, what they need prepped out. Um, and it's always constant communication. Like there's no one time that I have had to just get on with the job.
Hmm.
I typically do have to ask production or leads, okay, what exactly does need to be done because there's no information on this
Right, okay.
anywhere that I can find. Um, so communication is one thing. If you're from a software point of view, Nuke is obviously a good one. Uh, the production tool called Shotgun,
Right, okay. Yeah.
um, that's a very good one. Different companies use different things. For example, I know ILM use their own in-house version.
Right, okay.
Um, so it
For
completely
those
depends.
for those people kind of listening, obviously I know what shotgun is, but do you want to just explain what exactly that is?
So it's a production tool to manage shows of all sorts. So you can you can add um, shots or every single shot that a show has, and then within that you can put different types of detail in it, of like camera detail, focal length. Um, if there was a retime or a respeed on the shot, then that information would be there. I don't know everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very in-depth bit of software,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but it's very good for scheduling as well. So making sure that an artist has a task to do, it will tell you, okay, so you start this shot today, and then you're meant to finish this shot on this day.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it's a very good scheduling tool for everyone, and it does utilize different plugins for like CineSync. I don't know too much about CineSync. It's basically a type of review software to show clients
Okay.
the work that they've done. But it's very mixed and match with what it can do.
I'm guessing from a roto prep lead kind of point of view, that's something you're using to assign shots and then quality check the shots. So something that you probably use quite often, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so quality checking definitely. I have I didn't set this up myself. Production set this up for me. All of the shots that get published to Shotgun for a lead like myself to check, it then gets fed through to my quality checking list of where I then check it through RV, which is it's another review type of software, and I think it's a child software of Shotgun.
Oh, okay.
So it's easy to integrate with Shotgun and import any of the information that you need, i.e. different types of color spaces. But yeah, I mainly use it for quality checking and making sure that what tasks everyone has, just so I can figure out, okay, so this show no longer has this much work to do. We can now figure out, okay, how are we going to move the artist onto the next show?
Yeah.
I mean, that's mainly a production role, but they do ask me for a bit of input
Okay.
on that side of things.
Yeah, it's good to know. Sorry, we've got about four questions left. Yeah, something like that. 5, I think. If there was one tool, one tool could be a piece of software, could be graphics tablet, anything. One tool or thing that you couldn't live without in your industry, what would it be? And I'm sure there's like 10 things which you probably couldn't live without. But what would you say is your most important tool that you couldn't do the job without?
I could go as far to say computer.
Yeah.
I would definitely say a graphics tablet.
Yeah.
It's definitely one from a 2D artist point of view. Some people prefer to use a mouse. I'm guilty of that. I
really?
prefer to use a mouse now. Yeah.
For paint or roto or both?
Everything.
Really?
Yeah, I did used to use a graphics tablet. But working from home, I don't have the space to put the tablet on my desk,
Right.
so I've had to use my mouse. But having a tablet does make things 10 times easier especially for paint work, because you're not restricted by the jitteriness of a mouse.
Yeah, okay.
For example, so for some reason having a tablet just makes it a lot easier for every aspect of it, even just general navigation of a computer. It's very, very handy because it's a very fluid movement.
Yeah.
To a mouse.
I find that quite interesting because when I was in industry, I was one of the only ones, like even people doing comp, and when we were doing comp work, like I preferred using a mouse, but the one time I will use a graphics tablet is for paint, cloning, that kind of stuff. But if I'm doing roto, I am actually the same as you, which I thought I was the only one out there. I'm the same as you, especially roto, 100% the mouse. Comp, match moving, mouse. Paint, cloning, yeah, I'm on the graphics tablet. So I thought I was the only weird one out there.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were the same, where everything else they use a mouse, and then for painting they use a graphics tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like that. I prefer to use a mouse for everything. It's just it's a bit weird, but it's easy for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so next question. Do you have, this is quite a broad one, but do you have any advice for students that are new to Nuke? So I've got a lot of students, especially coming into the foundation degree next year. They love After Effects, they love the layer-based way of working, and some of them they want to be visual effects artists, but they're really apprehensive about Nuke. And I know full well after 2 or 3 weeks they'll be fine. But do you have any sort of advice for students that are new to Nuke? It could be specific training resources, or it could be an area that you think they should start with, or yeah, any advice.
So definitely, when it comes to learning Nuke, you should look at different websites like Pluralsight, FX PhD. They've got loads of training guides on how to do. I think they mainly show comp work, which is good for learning how to utilize the comp side of things. But definitely look at the Foundry intro stuff as well, because they will. For me, I constantly looked at the Foundry tutorials on how to use the basics, because Nuke is a super complex bit of software. For me personally, it took about it took me about 3 months, I think, to fully get my head around how Nuke works. So definitely do that, and if anything, learn the roto side of it first, because learn at least the way I got taught it when I got shown how to use Nuke. If you learn the roto, how to roto on it, you then learn how to do the prep side of it. Then if you learn how to do the prep side of it, you then learn how to do the comp. So because it's roto is the most basic thing you should do in Nuke. So my bit of advice is to just learn how to roto on Nuke. And I know that's a massive jump from what you said. Some have been using After Effects. Yeah, so it's a massive jump considering it's a nodal based software compared to a layer based.
Yeah.
So just learning how to understand, okay, so this node goes here and this node then goes here, to have like a tree effect, I suppose. It's difficult to explain on what advice I could give, because there's so much advice I can give.
Yeah, I get you.
But I would definitely just start with roto
first. I think that would kind of be my kind of, if I was to give them advice. I mean, that's what I'm going to do when I start teaching them. But what does kind of, I hope they end up thinking the same as me, because some of them are like, oh, so easy to mask out stuff or roto stuff in After Effects, and I'm like, I'm personally thinking you don't even realize what you're saying, because I don't even think you can like feather individual sort of splines and handles within. No, you can't do that in After Effects. Whereas if you want to feather just a certain part, it's so easy, and that's just one example of many things. Like they're like, oh, so easy to roto in After Effects, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I think I haven't used After Effects in years, so for me, it's if I was to try and do like the whole masking element and just work out the layer size, then that would be just confusing.
Yeah.
Because compared to Nuke anyway, Nuke, like you said, Nuke does have like the fine tuning element, which After Effects doesn't have, which is why it's used industry wide, because of just how much detail the Foundry have put into the software to make it to allow the artists to have as much control as they can possibly get.
Yeah. Cool. Go on, sorry.
No, that's possibly as much advice I can give, is to just start from the bottom.
Nice, yeah. I got a question here. As a student who struggles with any sort of coding language, do you have any advice for learning Python? And actually, I barely know any Python, so this is a question from them, and it's a good question for me as well.
Python's very complicated. It's a super complicated language, but it's logic based. So any of the Cody people out there, I don't know that many types of languages, but it's based off logic. So like for loops, if statements. So if you want something to do this, then you have to tell it to do this. That kind of logic that it bides off. Um, I've used it a tiny bit for outside of Nuke, but I mainly use it within Nuke. So I know a lot of the Nuke API variables to then apply to my own scripts. So, for example, I have a Python script that allows me to press a shortcut, so like Shift A, I think it is, where in a tracker, if you have to stabilize, if you have to turn on the transform rotation scale individually for, say, you had 4 trackers in a track, you'd have to turn them on individually without the script. I've got a script that allows me to just press that shortcut key and it stabilizes it and turns on all of that with one click of a button. With Python, with how to learn it yourself, I've been watching a very good video on YouTube, which is very, very in depth on how to learn the basics of it. Because it's not my area of expertise, I couldn't exactly give you the best advice. But definitely, if you wanted to learn how the syntax works in Python, then I could even give you the link if I can find it.
I was about to say I'll link that in this video when I upload it, and I'll give it to my students. Yeah, would you say you're more of a technical kind of technical artist rather than creative? Because I've always thought you kind of get your technical artists and then you get your kind of creative artists, and I would put myself on that more creative side because coding languages are just boom, head explodes. So would you say you're more technical or creative?
I've always been told I'm incredibly technical.
I can see that.
I don't know if I believe it myself, but yeah, I've been told I'm technical in a lot of ways. But that's a tricky one for me to answer because I'm technical in a different way. I couldn't explain to you how, like, what that way is, but the way that my mind works, I'm very technical in the sense that I understand something that an artist may not be able to understand from a proper technical point of view. It's very difficult for me to explain.
Yeah, that's fine. Go on.
No, I was just gonna say it's very difficult.
We have actually only got one question left because we answered the question earlier about what's your favourite project that you worked on and why. So that's good. So the last question is, what is, if you can share, what is the most challenging shot you've worked on? How was it challenging, and how did you overcome it?
Ooh. So the Avengers again. So I'm sorry, it has to be Avengers. There's a shot where it's very near the beginning of the film where Ant-Man comes out of his time machine or the quantum realm van, and he like lands on a bunch of boxes. And the shot that did the most difficult shot in that particular scene was that the camera was above him and then it was slowly moving down to like point in his face, and for around 20 seconds. And in that there was around like 20 seconds worth of footage. And there was a lot of parallax, and originally it was meant to just be me on that shot.
Yeah.
But then we realized it was actually meant to have at least 4 artists because it was a very tricky shot. Because there were loads of moving bits.
Yeah.
We ended up having 10 artists on that shot, and the shot itself lasted for about 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
3-4 months. I think we started it in October or September, and then we didn't really get it out until the beginning of January.
Wow.
Next year. So it was very tricky in terms of how we were going to do it because there were so many moving parts, and the scan, when you do prep, you need to make sure that the prep matches what the scan would look like without the element that you're removing. And that was the most tricky bit because we had to completely rebuild the shot. and we couldn't see half of what we were doing
Right.
because
Okay.
of the element that we were trying to remove. It was very difficult to try and be creative and still make the shot look like it was part of the original footage.
That's mental, because you're saying that you were the only artist on it. I'm guessing at first the studio kind of really underestimated how challenging that shot was going to be. So you must have been like, "Oh my gosh, what have they done to me?"
Yeah, I think it was bid at something like 15 days originally, and then it went to well over 100.
Wow.
100 days. So yeah, that's give or take 3 months.
That's insane. That is. Right. Well, I think we have come to the end of the questions. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I can kind of ask you. I'm guessing you must be, you're still in the industry, so you're absolutely loving it at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, as good as it can get working from home.
Yeah.
Being stuck in my room all day. But no, it's good. It is very good to still be doing work, because I can imagine with a lot of people, they wouldn't like to be at home and not do anything.
Of course. Yeah.
They would just like to do a bit of work. But yeah, no, I'm glad that the industry is still running and I'm still able to do my job.
Yeah, no, that's really good, because I was always wondering what it would look like post-COVID, and I don't think, maybe we don't know yet. Maybe some studios could be like, especially from the freelance point of view, if they've got a short project, maybe this remote working, who knows, maybe that will carry on for a bit.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about how each studio is going to handle it. But I'd imagine we will get back into it very soon, especially with filming, because seen that a few films have started filming again. So hopefully that will be good for all of us, and we'll be able to carry on like we never stopped.
Yeah, that's great. Well, cheers for giving up some of your time for us today, Con. I know my students are going to be really, really excited to see this, and it's going to be really, really helpful for them. So I can't thank you enough for that. So yeah, I think